Hi everybody, we're on lesson 11 in the Roger Hudson guitar method, the key of D major. It's on page 55. In D major you're going to need to have F sharps and C sharps. There are two sharps in the key signature, F sharp and C sharp. You can play this scale in first position. You can also play this scale in second position as well. I'll show you both ways. Here's first position. Now in the third measure, you're going to need to shift to second position. When you play the F sharp, in order to get to the high A, you'll need to shift to second position. You can also do this in second position, the entire scale in the second position. So you'll put your first finger over the second fret. Your first finger will play second fret notes. Your fourth finger will play the fifth fret, high A. Fourth string, you have F sharp will be played with the third finger. Here's D major in second position. All right. Keep in mind that the fingerings will not be the same. The first couple of measures, that's still first position fingerings, so you'll need to change the fingerings there to play it in second position. The second position D major scale can also be played with no open strings at all in the second position if you start with your fourth finger here on the D rather than starting it off on the fourth string open. So here's the D major scale with no open strings. Here's a D major scale study, page 55. At the bottom of the page, we have ascending and descending slurs, also known as hammer-ons and pull-offs. Playing ascending slurs, 1. Start with the first finger down, pick the string, firmly hammer the second finger down without picking the string again. Do not lift up the first finger. This is really important. Make sure that when you do a hammer-on or an ascending slur, don't move your first finger up like this. That's not good technique because a lot of times you'll need to come back down to that first finger note, and so you might as well leave it down. The second finger is canceling out that first finger note anyway, so it doesn't need to be picked up. When you play descending slurs, you need to start off with both the first and second fingers on the fingerboard. Pick the string, pull or flick the second finger off and toward the floor. Do not lift the first finger until the open string is played. Alright, we have the last measure has an open string. Make sure you play these very evenly. You're going to play them with the same note values that they would have if they were being picked. For example, if you picked all the notes in the exercise at the bottom of 55, it would sound like this. But if you have a curved line in between the first two notes, that tells you that those notes need to be slurred. So you don't need to play those quicker. Sometimes people will play they'll go very quickly on the hammer-on or the pull-off. You don't rush those just because you like the sound of that or something. It's just it's not a trill. A trill is a different sort of thing where you're trying to go quickly. These are slurs. So here's the exercise at the bottom of page 55. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, make sure you play. Make sure you're holding down those fingers when you start that pull-off. Don't play like this. You won't get a very good sound. Another thing to make sure that you do is you're flicking the string. You're literally picking the string with your left-hand finger like this. All right, don't lift it off. If you lift it off, it won't be very strong. It'll be weak. That's why they're called pull-offs rather than lift-offs. And then the hammer-on really needs to be hammered down. And what you're doing there is your finger is hitting that string again. I can do a trill like this without even picking the note on the right hand. So my left hand's actually doing the work. So those are hammer-ons and pull-offs. Continuing on page 56, there's a little piece here that I wrote that's sort of in a Renaissance style. The Renaissance period goes back to the 15th century into the early 17th century. In this piece, it is basically centered around a D major chord. So if you remember a few chapters back, we had the D major chord. The beginning of this piece, you might as well hold the D major. We also have the dotted 8th, 16th rhythm. So you'll need to think in terms of subdividing the beat into 4 parts. 1 E and a 2. 1 E and a 2. Like that is how it works. I switch these around. Sometimes I have the dotted rhythm. Sometimes I have straight 8th notes. So watch for the difference there. Sometimes I have them, sometimes I don't. Also make sure you're holding bass notes down. And also you're holding melody notes down. For example, in measure 4, this note right here is a melody note, and the bass note is the one that actually moves. So we were talking about holding down bass notes while melody notes are playing. Sometimes you need to hold melody notes down while the bass notes are moving. Also in the 4th line, there is a measure there that's actually a 6/8 measure. A lot of Renaissance music would go back and forth between the simple meter, which would be 3/4, dividing the beat into 2 parts, to a compound meter where you're dividing the beat into 3 parts, 3/4, 6/8 sort of thing. Keep in mind that the difference between 3/4 and 6/8 has to do with accents, with emphasis. In 3/4 time, here's the way you would accent 8th notes. These were 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3, and I'll do this with my right hand. These would be 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3, and here's where the beats would lie. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 3 and okay. In 6/8, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the speed of the 8th notes in this piece is not different between the 3/4 and the 6/8. I didn't actually write in 6/8 down at that 4th line because I beamed them in the way that would be in 6/8 time. Sometimes you just need to look at the beaming to see that that's a 6/8 measure. So it would be played like this. Back to the 3/4 in there. All right, here's Renaissance Fair. At the bottom of page 56, we have rhythmic syncopation. Ties are often used to make rhythms a little less predictable. In the example below, a tie is used between the and or upbeat of beat 2 and the downbeat of 3. This means that there will not be a note played on beat 3. Two tied notes ring as a single note. So make sure you're observing the tie. This is sort of an accompaniment sort of pattern that might be used with somebody singing. You can play it as a solo, but it's really kind of more of an accompaniment type thing. This is also based on the D chord. You have some basic chords here: D, an A shape, a C shape, a G, a type of G, and then an A, another A. So try to hold each one of these measures as a chord. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. On page 57, here's a little lullaby that I wrote for my son. It's on my guitar piece album. On this one, make sure you're holding fingers down with the chords. Everything needs to be very smooth. No staccato playing in this one. All the notes need to be sustained. The melody goes like this. This one also has a DC al fine. You go down to the bottom of the page, go back to measure 17, and then that's when the DC al fine kicks in. You go back to the beginning, and you end it at the fine. This is Goodnight Prince. On page 58, we're going to get into barring 2 or 3 strings. As we saw earlier with the common F chord, it is sometimes necessary to hold down 2 or more strings with the first finger. This is called a bar or bar with a sort of French spelling. Bars often require a lot of practice, so keep trying. The exercise below only uses a bar for 2 or 3 strings. This will help you to prepare for barring 4, 5, and 6 strings later. The chords below will be used in the guitar 2 part of Jazzy Weather on page 59. Roman numerals 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Are used to indicate the fret number where the bar will be placed. The Arabic numeral 2, 3, 4, or 5 indicates how many strings will be barred. If you see a Roman numeral alone, that means that a full bar will be used. That's all 6 strings. So, on page 58, you need to look at all the chords. Keep in mind the sharps in the key signature. If you look at the bar, there's a Roman numeral 2. That means the bar is going to be at the 2nd fret, and then the 3 tells you that 3 strings will be barred. The bottom note is a 4th string open, so that's the first chord. And the next chord is going to be a bar at the 3rd fret, 2 strings. The 2 and the 3 with a circle around it means that this 2nd finger will need to play a 3rd string note. The B normally would be here, but you're not going to be able to do it because the 2nd string is going to be barred. So here's the 2nd chord. All right. The 3rd chord there in the 2nd measure is the same as the 1st chord. I didn't put the fingerings down. I didn't. Hopefully you'll begin to recognize these when you see them. Then you have all open strings. That's the 2nd chord of the 2nd measure. Back to that 1st chord again, so you're coming back to that. And then the 2nd chord of the 3rd measure is that same 2nd chord again. Now we have something different on the 2nd line, 4th measure. You're going to have to come up to the 5th fret, bar 2 strings at the 5th fret. The 2nd finger needs to play the 3rd string C sharp. That note normally would be here, but you can't play that there because the E is being played, E and A. So the C sharp will need to be played on the 3rd string, 6th fret. All right, with a 5th string, with a 4th string bass note. Then the next one is the 7th fret, bar 3 strings, right there. The A bass note. This note is the D, 3rd string, F sharp, and B. All right. Then you go back down to the 5th fret bar. All right, back down to this chord again that we saw earlier, and then back to the original chord. So here's how this sequence goes. All right, those chords will be used in the guitar 2 part of Jazzy Weather on page 59. The D major scale in 7th position, 1 octave. The guitar 1 part of Jazzy Weather, page 59, will be played in the 7th position to allow higher melody notes to be used. Position shifting. Sometimes it is not possible or efficient to stay in one position. A position shift may be needed to complete a musical phrase. This must be done smoothly. The shift must be seamless. You shouldn't be able to hear someone shifting when they go from one place to another on the guitar. If you were blindfolded and you weren't watching them play, you shouldn't be able to hear where they're moving. Sometimes you'll hear a squeak when somebody shifts, and players try to limit the squeaks, but they're usually inevitable. But if there's shifts on the 1st string, 2nd string, 3rd string, particularly on those strings, you really shouldn't be able to hear the shift. So here's the D major scale in 7th position. You're going to start 1st finger, 3rd string, and then 3rd finger, 1st finger, 2nd string, 2nd finger, 2nd string, 4th finger, 2nd string, 1st finger, 1st string, 3rd finger, 1st string, 4th finger, 1st string. We've gone from D to D here. 3rd measure, back down, C sharp, B, A, G, F sharp. Then you're going to shift 4th finger on the E, 2nd finger, you're in 6th position here. You've got to get that C sharp in there, that leading tone. So Here's the octave. This is easy to see. You can play octaves anywhere. This is one way to play octaves between the first and third strings. Between the second and fourth strings, it's also like this. And between the third, it's also a good way to check your tuning. Sometimes when you're on a classical guitar, sometimes the strings are not, won't always be in tune between the open chord, like if you play the E major chord and check that, it might sound good. But then you play an octave, like that. That second string doesn't sound right. So you have to sometimes tweak it. When in doubt, go flat. If you're not sure which way to go, just go flat and you'll know you're too low. Alright? So then that string doesn't sound right. So the second string is a little off. So I'm going to have to split the difference on this. It's not exactly perfect, but I'm trying to split the difference between the open strings and the fretted notes. Here's the D major scale in 7th position. Alright, practice the excerpt below from Bach's famous minuet to get familiar with shifting positions. 1, 2, 3. In Jazzy Weather, the guitar 1 part is going to stay in that position with the D major scale in 7th position. You're going to occasionally have to shift. At the beginning it starts with this little octave and 5th motion. That's basically how the melody goes. It goes back to the beginning. The guitar 2 part is the chords. Make sure you're paying attention to the rhythm, and make sure you're paying attention to where the bars happen. All right, here are the chords. 1, 2, 3, 4. To the beginning after that. Here's Jazzy Weather, both parts. 3, 4.